They don't call Melbourne the Windy City for nothing, do they?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry. All right.
We are all set, everyone? Well, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for waiting. I'm delighted to be here this morning with Adam Bandt, across the road from Southern Cross Station. And it's important because the Greens are here to announce 21st century infrastructure and a real advancement for high-speed rail. 21st century challenges need 21st century solutions. Everywhere around the world we're seeing high-speed rail roll out, linking cities, making cities more livable, actually engaging in increased productivity for those cities, and in Australia we are lagging behind. Because of our agreement with Prime Minister Gillard, the Greens secured studies into the feasibility of having high-speed rail in Australia, and we're now saying let's get beyond feasibility studies and let's actually move and get high-speed rail happening in Australia. Melbourne to Sydney is one of the busiest air routes anywhere in the world. Wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to link Melbourne and Sydney with high-speed rail? What a difference that would make. And then to extend it further up the East Coast. It's a wonderful opportunity for Australia to really advance high-speed rail, and that's exactly what the Greens intend to do. We don't want to see this lapse. We don't want to see Liberal and Labor prefer to spend money on coal railways and east-west tunnels. Rather, we want to see not only advancement in urban rail, but we want to see our cities linked with high-speed rail. We want to be able to say that Australia is joining the rest of the world in not only reducing emissions, but moving people around faster and improving the productivity of our cities and the lives of everyone who lives in them. Adam.
Thanks, Christine. Australia and Antarctica are the only continents without high-speed rail underway. And I'm worried that if we leave it up to Labor and Liberal, the Penguins are going to beat us to it. The Greens want to put high-speed rail on the fast track. The Prime Minister has said that infrastructure will be a key question this election. But one of the most important questions we face as a country is how we will move people between our cities and how we will support growth in our regional centres. With high-speed rail, you could get on a train here at Southern Cross and in Melbourne and be in Sydney in less than 3 hours. Now, point to point, that's about the same time that it takes on air when you factor in all of the other costs. Building high-speed rail on the East Coast would generate over 200,000 jobs for the lifetime of the project. And that is especially important at a time when manufacturing and construction and the southeastern states in general are suffering as a result of the ongoing mining boom. It would also be a great boost for the planet. When high-speed rail is fully operational, it'll be the equivalent of taking 365,000 cars off the road every year. It's an idea whose time has come. The Greens are pushing for this to move from beyond studies, of which we've had a number now, into reality. Our proposal is to implement the accelerated timetable that's been foreshadowed in the report that the Greens secured, and that report showed that high-speed rail isn't only feasible, it's incredibly desirable and comes with a whole host of benefits for the community as well as for the economy. Within the next few years, we could be planning and finalising the route and signing contracts to start building this piece of nation and planet building infrastructure that will set Australia up well for the future, will stimulate the southeastern states and will solve some of the biggest problems Australia is facing as a growing country.
What will it cost?
Adam, you want to talk about that?
The overall cost of the project over its lifetime has been estimated in the Phase 2 report as being between $80 and $110 billion. Now that's spread out over several decades. What the Greens are proposing is an upfront investment of $1.2 billion over the coming 4 years. What that will enable us to do is establish the High Speed Rail Authority, get the environmental impact statement underway, if not completed, and do all of those other preparatory work so that we're in a position where hopefully within 4 or 5 years' time we can then start signing the contracts. And at that point, we have to have an important discussion about how best to fund it. This is something that the Greens, where you will find the Greens and people like the Business Council singing from the same song sheet. With Australia with a very good credit rating, borrowing money to fund projects like this has never been cheaper. And that's something that we should investigate, but that would be a decision to be made in about 4 or 5 years' time.
Georgie Moore from...
So, Christine Milner, at what environmental cost are you prepared for this high-speed rail project to pay?
High Speed Rail will need to have several routes assessed, and then the environmental impact assessment to look at where we can minimise environmental impact. But you also have to look at the overall impact in terms of reduced emissions and the improvement in livability in Australia, lack of congestion in the cities, interconnectedness, improved opportunities in regional centres. We would be looking to minimise the environmental impact on the ground but maximise the benefits to Australia in terms of reduced greenhouse gas emissions and also improved livability and quality of life for people in this country.
Abbott has come out today to say that the Labor should never govern with the Greens again. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Tony Abbott should come out and explain how long he has been governing and in agreement with the National Party. I mean, he's busy talking about majority government, and yet the Liberals haven't been in a majority government without the Nats. He should be telling Australia that if he were to be elected, then the Deputy Prime Minister would be Warren Truss. And how many Australians have even heard of Warren Truss, let alone the deals that are done in the back rooms with the National Party? The reality is we've got multi-party politics in Australia, and the Greens are going to stand strongly against the excesses of an Abbott government. The worst thing that we could have is for Tony Abbott to get control of both houses of Parliament, and we'll be standing there strongly to protect the price on pollution, to protect the $10 billion going into renewable energy and all the jobs associated with that against Tony Abbott. But equally, we'll be there in the case of a Rudd government being returned. We will be there strongly to stop him reducing the price of pollution to the big polluters and stop him back-flipping on climate change.
Now, there are reports this morning that Labor won't be directing its preferences to the Greens in the Senate. Firstly, can you confirm whether that deal is true? And secondly, what impact would that have on your hopes of getting a senator in Victoria, a second senator in Victoria?
Well, the first thing is I'd be encouraging everybody to go out and enrol to vote. We've only got a week to do that, and so I'd encourage people to go out and do that. And secondly, in relation to preferences, we're saying vote Green first, and then you decide where you put your preferences. You don't have to be locked into any kinds of negotiations that parties might do. All political parties engage in preference negotiations. They're required to, by law, to lodge a Senate ticket. And what we're seeing from both Liberal and Labor at the moment is some sort of jockeying for position. What the Greens are doing is out campaigning for what matters, and that is looking after our environment, rolling out infrastructure like high-speed rail, pushing for more renewable energy, 100% renewable energy across Australia, and asking people to consider compassion and not cruelty when it comes to refugees. They're our focus in this campaign.
Georgie?
What are your thoughts on John Gay pleading guilty to insider trading?
Well, Mr Gay has pleaded guilty to insider trading, and it's ended the whole saga of the pulp mill in Tasmania. It has been a long and sorry saga. It has brought down governments over the years. We've had pulp mill companies, Gunns in particular, basically negotiating with premiers in Tasmania and dictating the terms for many years, and so the courts will finally make their judgment in terms of whatever punishment. But it's an end of an era for Tasmania, and this is what happens when you have majority governments dealing with large corporates in a rather unhealthy manner over a long period of time. I think Tasmania now has an opportunity to move to the clean, green future, which clearly has the jobs and best interests of Tasmania at heart.
Christine, would you welcome a class action against guns directors?
I have no doubt that there will be many people concerned, shareholders concerned about what happened to guns and they're in administration, and
Would you welcome a class action?
I would, well, it's up to people whether they take that action or not, but yes, I would welcome, if there is a case for people to take class action, then they should take that if that's their choice. But the main thing is this saga is over. Tasmania has moved on. We have an opportunity for a new era in our state, and I look forward to that.
Has the collapse of guns been good for Tasmania?
Oh, look, I think the problem for Tasmania was that guns had so much power in the state. It really was a classic case of the hydro having too much power that led to the Franklin campaign, and then guns having so much power that it led to massive civil disturbance and bad decisions being made. I'm glad that era's over. I think guns did have too much power in Tasmania, and I look forward to a new era where we can have the best we've got for Tasmania, our wilderness, our high quality food and beverages, our whole tourism industry out there with a diversified economy and not so dependent on one particular sector.
And do you think the pulp mill will ever be revived?
No, I don't think the pulp mill will ever be revived in Tasmania, and that's a good thing. It was always a highly polluting proposition. It was going to be a craft chlorine pulp mill. You're going to lose native forests, you're going to see massive pollution of Bass Strait and pollution of the Tamar Valley airshed. That era is gone. The idea that you can have a great big factory come over the horizon and dominate the Tasmanian economy has gone. It failed in the past. We're now seeking a diversified economy of high quality and exports which are high value, low volume. That's a much better future for us in the longer term.
Just finally from me, how comfortable are the Greens governing with Labor again potentially?
Well, the Greens are out to maximise our primary vote in this election, and I'm very pleased with the polling that's showing that Adam's doing so well in the seat of Melbourne, and I'm confident that Janet Rice is going to get up in the Senate as well. I think the Greens are going to do well at this election.
So how comfortable are you to govern with Labor again?
Well, the Greens are campaigning to win as many seats as we can. That means retaining Adam in the House of Representatives and a strong position in the Senate. We will accept whatever the outcome of the election is, because unlike the Liberal Party, who are so arrogant, they're saying to the Australian people that it's their way or the highway, and that they are running for opposition if they don't get majority government. Well, that's their decision. What we're saying is that we will work with whatever the Australian people return at an election.
Last week you make the tenor of the comments from some Labor insiders in the Financial Review today. There's a suggestion that the Greens I don't want to repeat it on live television, but it wasn't pleasant. Is there an acrimonious process going on at the moment?
What I find fascinating is that Labor has adopted a slogan, a new way, and is engaged in the old way of very negative politics. That's not what the Australian people want, and that kind of doublespeak will just reinforce the view that Labor can't be trusted, and that will backflip, and that the coalition will be excessive in whatever they do. The Greens are out there saying, we want to run a positive campaign that says to Australians we will care for people and care for the environment, and that means strong action on climate change and compassion for refugees.
You counted split tickets then, so that would potentially see Tony Abbott's or coalition MPs elected above Labor MPs?
What we're saying is that people should vote for whoever they want to and choose their own preferences. Preference negotiations are done by the parties, and I'm not party to what's going to happen.
It's a fact of life that if you had a split ticket, then Greens voters would put Liberal candidates above Labor ones. Would you be happy to see a split ticket?
I want to have people vote for whoever they like when they get into the polling booth, that they mark the Greens first and then whoever they like after that.
Okay, so you won't rule that out then, am I right?
The negotiations go on between all political parties. Today you've heard from both the government and the coalition positioning themselves, trying to bully the community, bully people. By law, it's required, a negotiation will take place, and I'm not part of those negotiations.
What would it do to the Greens vote if Labor ran split tickets or open tickets?
Well, here in Melbourne, where Adam Bandt is already polling something like 48%, it's a fantastic outcome. We're hoping to win Melbourne in our own right.
What about in the Senate?
The Greens are going to do well in the Senate. I've got no doubt Janet Rice is doing particularly well here in Victoria, and we are campaigning hard on our issues. And the feedback I'm getting from the electorate is that they see the Greens as the only progressive force in Australian politics who are standing up for international law, for compassion for people against cruelty, and who are standing up against the expansion of coal seam gas and coal trains in Queensland. We're the ones saying, let's look after our environment, let's save the Tarkine, protect the Great Barrier Reef, let's care for people. People are hearing the message, and it's about the primary vote.
So are the Greens open to a deal with Tony Abbott? Are you
We've-
talking to the Liberal Party?
The Greens have said we won't support an Abbott government.
Would you do a deal on preferences with Tony Abbott?
The Greens will be, the party, like all other parties, will be talking about preferences. Those negotiations will be ongoing. I'm not part of those. What I'm saying to people is, you choose. When you get into the polling booth, vote for the Greens and then vote for whoever you like.
Just on another matter, for the last question, I hope that there's a cut to interest rates today. It'll deliver significant relief to not only people with mortgages but also businesses if it's passed on to businesses to allow them to borrow. But if there is a cut in interest rates, you can almost predict what the response will be. The Treasurer will come out and beat his chest and urge the banks to pass it on, but then do nothing about it. The Shadow Treasurer will come out and make some statements about the economy and will then say that there should be cost of living pressures reduced, but will do nothing about it. The banks continue to make a mozza off the back of everyday Australians, and neither Labor nor Liberal have the guts to stand up to them to actually make them do something about it. The Greens will continue to press our proposal to make the big banks pay a fair levy so that they return to the public purse some money in return for the support that we give them. We also want to make sure that banks are required to offer a mortgage product that will go up and down with the real cost of borrowing to them. Because what we know is that net interest margins for banks are in a very good shape as far as the banks are concerned. Our banks are the most profitable in the world. And this chest beating that you see from the Treasurer and the Shadow Treasurer urging banks to do something and to saying that they're standing on the side of ordinary Australians is wearing a bit thin, because when push comes to shove, they never do anything about it. The Greens will, because we're prepared to stand up to the big banks.
I have two
Okay, thank
questions. Georgie Moore from Sin Media. Back to the rail scheme, how long will it take to implement?
Well, within 5 years, we could be signing the first contracts. Building it will take a decade or so after that. Obviously, one of the key components of the line to get operational is Sydney to Melbourne and through Canberra, and that would be the priority. The feasibility study suggests that that could be up and running by 2025 or 2035 at the latest. We want to fast track it and get it built as soon as possible, and if possible earlier than that.
How many jobs do the Greens expect to come out of this project?
Well, over the lifetime of its construction, if overseas experience is anything to go by, you'd see about 228,000 jobs being created from it. And then, of course, when it's operational, there's ongoing jobs associated with that. And the good thing about this project now is that it would help stimulate manufacturing and construction in the southeastern states, and they're sectors of the economy and states of Australia that are doing it tough. So it's the right project for the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Final question on preferences. Can you see an arrangement that you would be happy with whereby a vote for the Greens is a vote for an Abbott government? Because if you run a split ticket, some of your voters will follow it, and off you go, your votes go off to the Liberal Party.
The thing we want is a vote for the Greens results in Greens being elected right around the country in the House of Reps and the Senate, and that's what we'll be working towards, and we'll be working towards delivering 21st century infrastructure like high-speed rail and like renewable energy, unlike Tony Abbott, who will try to pull down the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, try to repeal carbon pricing, and the Greens will stand there saying, no, we're 21st century people, we want that infrastructure, and we want this country to benefit from the jobs and the innovation that come from a low carbon economy. Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard from all the major players in the last 2 hours.